Have you ever watched a mother uninvite her own daughter from Thanksgiving dinner? Not over an argument, but because that daughter's job wasn't impressive enough to show off in front of company. 5 days before the holiday, my mother called with a blunt announcement. Your sister is bringing her rich boyfriend home to meet everyone. She'd rather you weren't there. Your schoolteacher's salary might embarrass her. Understood, I said, and I hung up the phone. What none of them realized was that I'd quietly been in charge of a $15 million inheritance, the very money my perfect sister was counting on to fund her dream wedding. 5 days later, when they found out the truth and showed up at my door in a panic, everything flipped in a direction none of us saw coming. My name is Thora Mitchell. I'm 32 years old. This is my story. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're tuning in from. The call came in on Sunday, November 24th, at 6:47 p.m. exactly. I remember the time because I'd been grading essays on the Progressive Era and had just finished writing glowing feedback on Marcus Thompson's paper about labor reform. I wouldn't appreciate the irony until later. There I was, praising a student for understanding workers' rights, while my own family was about to remind me exactly where I ranked in theirs. Thora, my mother said, her tone carrying that familiar mix of forced sweetness and steel underneath. We need to talk about Thanksgiving. I put my red pen down. In the Mitchell household, we need to talk never came before good news. What about it? A pause followed, the kind that arrives right before bad news wrapped in silk. Vivian is bringing Derek to meet everyone. You know how much this matters to her. Derek Hartwell. I'd heard his name maybe 400 times over the last 3 months. CEO of Hartwell Capital, a private equity firm with over $400 million under management. Vivian shot at the life she'd always felt entitled to. That's wonderful, I told her, and I meant it. Whatever else was going on, I wanted my sister to be happy. I can't wait to meet him. Another pause, longer this time. That's actually the thing I wanted to bring up. Vivian feels. Well, she thinks it might be best if you skipped this year. The words hit like stones dropped into still water, and I felt the ripple spread through my chest, cold and all too familiar. I'm sorry. It isn't personal, Thora. It's just that Derek comes from a certain world, finance, investments, all of that. And she paused to find the word, though we both knew she already had it, your career choice might send the wrong impression. My career choice. As though I'd fallen into teaching by chance instead of clawing my way through certification while working 2 jobs to cover grad school. Mom, I have a master's degree in education. I've taught for 10 years. Exactly, she said, her voice shifting as if I'd just made her argument for her. 10 years, and you're making what, 50,000? 58. Not that the number mattered. In her ledger, it would never be enough. Vivian's a marketing director now. She deals with investors, with people of real means. She needs Derek to see that this family fits into his world. I thought back to last Thanksgiving, to how my mother had introduced me to the Hendersons from her book club. This is Thora, my oldest. She teaches. That pause, heavy with disappointment she didn't bother hiding. Vivian, of course, is in corporate marketing, her voice sliding from flat recitation into proud announcement, a shift too smooth to be accidental. It wasn't. I thought about the email she'd sent 3 months earlier, asking me to chip in for Vivian's engagement party. Since you don't have your own family to provide for, I'm sure you can spare a bit extra. $3,000 should cover the flowers and part of the venue. I'd wired the money that same day without a word of complaint. Teachers, according to the National Education Association, earn 26.4% less than similarly educated professionals in other fields. I knew that figure cold. Not because it made me feel sorry for myself, but because I taught it to my own students, part of a lesson on how society decides which labor gets valued. I never expected to become a living example of it in my own family. Mom, I said carefully, I could just come by after dinner, say hello, meet Derek. Vivian was very clear, my mother's voice hardened. She doesn't want you there at all. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. Don't make this harder for her. As though I were the one holding the knife. I looked around my one-bedroom apartment in Somerville, the place I'd called home for 6 years. The second-hand couch I'd reupholstered myself. Bookshelves stuffed with history texts and lesson plans. The tiny kitchen where I packed lunches at 5:30 every morning because the school cafeteria was too expensive. This was the life that embarrassed them. I understand, I said. The phrase came out automatically, worn smooth from a decade of use. I understood when she forgot my birthday but threw Vivian a surprise party. I understood when my promotion to department chair got no mention at dinner while Vivian's new office got 20 minutes of conversation. I understood when I got left out of the family Christmas photo because the photographer charged more for a group over 4. I understand, the 2 most expensive words I've ever learned to say. Good, relief flooding her voice. I knew you'd be reasonable. You always are. We said our goodbyes, and I set the phone down. For a long while I just sat there, watching the last daylight drain from the window. Marcus Thompson's essay still sat on my desk, his words about dignity and fair treatment glowing under the lamp. Then I opened my laptop. There was a folder I hadn't touched in months, simply labeled Grandma Eleanor. Inside was an email from Margaret Caldwell, attorney, dated November 20th, subject line, Annual Trust Review, Eleanor Mitchell Trust. I'd been avoiding it, avoiding the questions it would force me to answer, the choices it would demand. I shut the laptop again. But that night, for the first time in 10 years, I didn't cry. I felt something else, a hollow space where my patience used to live. And somewhere inside that emptiness, something new had started taking root. The phone call stayed with me through Monday. Standing in front of my third-period class, explaining the causes of the Great Depression, I could still hear my mother's voice underneath every word. Your career choice might send the wrong message. I was teaching these kids about economic ruin, about families losing everything, and my own family treated my paycheck like a scandal. Ms. Mitchell? A hand went up. Jasmine Reyes, sharp as ever. You okay? You seem kind of out of it. I managed a smile. Just thinking about how history repeats itself, Jasmine. Sometimes in ways you don't expect. That night I weighed what silence would cost me. If I accepted this, if I simply nodded along and stayed home like a good, invisible daughter, what would come next? Easter, Thora, Derek's family will be there, maybe sit this one out. Vivian's wedding, it's small, very exclusive, you understand. Every future holiday, birthday, funeral, my own family's milestones passing me by. I'd become a ghost in my own history. And the financial cost was just as real. My mother had already made a habit of pulling money from me whenever it suited her, the $3,000 for Vivian's engagement party, the $2,500 loan the year before for my father's boat repairs, never repaid, never brought up again. There was always an unspoken assumption that because I had no husband, no kids, my money was somehow shared property. Stay silent, and the asks would only get bigger, and I'd keep paying, because that's the price the family disappointment pays to keep her seat at a table she was never really welcome at. Around 9 that night my phone buzzed, a text from my father, Harold. Sweetheart, sorry about Thanksgiving. Your mother thinks it's for the best. Love you. I stared at those words for a long time. Harold Mitchell, 63, retired accountant, a lifelong spectator to his wife's decisions. He'd never once stood up for me, not when I got passed over, not when my accomplishments went unacknowledged, not when my mother chipped away at me in 100 small ways. But he always said he loved me. As though love without any action behind it meant something. I didn't reply. Instead I opened my laptop again. Margaret Caldwell's email sat in my inbox like a letter from a different life. My grandmother, Eleanor, had passed 2 years earlier at 85. She was the one person in my family who'd ever really seen me. When I finished my master's, she drove 3 hours to be there while my parents mailed a card. When I landed my first teaching job, she took me to dinner and told me she was proud. When I admitted how invisible I felt at family gatherings, she took my hand and said, "Thora, you're not invisible. You're just surrounded by people who've forgotten how to look." I hadn't understood what she'd really done for me until she was gone. I opened Margaret's email. "Dear Ms. Mitchell, per our annual review, the Eleanor Mitchell Irrevocable Trust currently holds assets valued at $15,247,891.33. As sole trustee, you retain full discretionary authority over distributions under Section 4.2 of the Trust Agreement. Please confirm your distribution plans for the coming fiscal year by December 1st. Any changes to distribution terms or added conditions must be documented before that deadline. I'm available to meet whenever suits you. Best, Margaret Caldwell, Caldwell and Associates. $15,247,891.33. Vivian was the sole beneficiary. I was the sole trustee, the one who decided when, how, and whether that money ever reached her. My grandmother had made that choice on purpose. She'd told me, in one of our final conversations, "Vivian isn't a bad person, Thora. She's just never had to learn the value of anything. I want you to be the one to teach her. It's the only way she'll understand." I'd sat on this secret for 2 years. Told no one, not my parents, not Vivian, not a soul. Partly because I didn't want my family's relationship with me to hinge on money. Partly because I wasn't sure I was ready to hold that kind of power. But now, sitting alone in the dark, freshly uninvited from a holiday dinner because my paycheck might embarrass my sister in front of her rich boyfriend, I started to reconsider. Not revenge, that was never what Grandma Eleanor wanted, and it wasn't what I wanted either. But boundaries. Accountability. The right to exist in my own family without having to apologize for who I'd become. I shut the laptop and stared out at the city lights. I'd carried this secret for 2 years, and I was beginning to think it was finally time to let it out. Thanksgiving arrived gray and cold, the kind of November day that makes you want to draw the curtains and pretend the world isn't happening. I woke at 7 out of habit, even on a holiday. The teacher in me refused to sleep past dawn. I brewed coffee in my little kitchen, watched the steam curl upward, and tried not to think about the gathering happening 15 miles away without me. By noon I'd graded 32 essays. By 3, I'd reorganized my entire bookshelf by historical period. By 5, I'd accepted that no amount of busy work was going to fill the hollow feeling in my chest. I made myself dinner, a microwaved turkey breast, instant mashed potatoes, canned cranberry sauce. The saddest Thanksgiving plate I'd ever put together, eaten standing at the counter because sitting down at my small table felt far too formal for a party of one. At 8:47 p.m. my phone lit up, a text from Vivian with a photo attached. "Thanks for understanding, sis. Derek loved dinner. He said your family's so put together, lol." The picture showed everyone gathered around my parents' mahogany table, the one Grandma Eleanor had given them 30 years back. Patricia beaming at the head of the table, Harold looking a little uneasy but smiling, and Vivian glowing beside a dark-haired man in an expensive sweater, Derek Hartwell, presumably. 4 place settings. No empty chair where I should have been sitting. So put together. I set the phone down, then picked it back up to study the photo more closely. My mother had on the pearl earrings I'd given her for her 60th, the ones she'd called simple but thoughtful. Vivian wore a cashmere wrap that cost more than my monthly rent. And there, visible on the sideboard in the background, sat my grandmother's silver tea service, the one she'd promised to me, since I was the only grandchild who ever helped her polish it. My mother had kept it. Of course she had. At 9:15 p.m. another text arrived from my father. "Sweetheart, I'm sorry. Your mother said this was for the best. Love you." I typed 3 different replies and deleted every one. What was there to say? He was sorry. He was always sorry. But sorry doesn't put a chair back at the table. I called Rachel Torres instead. Rachel taught AP English at my school. We'd started the same year, survived countless staff meetings side by side, and built the kind of friendship forged in shared frustration and bad cafeteria coffee. She'd absorbed a decade of Mitchell family stories and was the only person outside my family who knew about the trust. "Please tell me you're not spending tonight alone," she said. "I'm alone, Rachel." Her voice held equal parts fondness and exasperation. "I told you to come to my sister's. Maria cooked enough for an army." "I know. I needed to sit with this." "Sit with what? Your family being awful? That ship sailed years ago." A pause. "What happened?" I told her about the text, the photo, the smiling faces arranged around a table with no room saved for me. Rachel went quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her tone was careful. "Thora, when are you going to stop letting them do this to you?" "I don't let them." "You do." "Not to be harsh, just true." "You bankroll their parties. You show up whenever they call. You apologize for existing. And they keep taking, because you keep giving. What am I supposed to do?" "You have options." "You know exactly what I mean." "I've never wanted to use it that way." "I know. But there's a difference between leverage and accountability." Her voice softened. "Your grandmother didn't make you trustee by accident, Thora. She saw something in you. Maybe it's time you saw it too." After we hung up, I sat with the laptop for a long while. Then I opened the folder, reread Margaret Caldwell's email, and finally clicked the attachment I'd been avoiding for months. The trust document ran 47 pages. I'd skimmed it once, right after Margaret first sent it, but the legal language had blurred together in a fog of grief and disbelief. This time I forced myself to actually read it. Section 4.2, Paragraph 1, the trustee shall retain sole and absolute discretion over the timing, amount, and conditions of any distributions to the beneficiary. Sole discretion. Absolute. I thought about Vivian's text, "Derek loved dinner, he said our family's so put together." I thought about the chair that never existed because they'd never bothered setting a place for me to begin with. I thought about my grandmother's voice, 2 months before she passed. "Someday you'll understand why I chose you, Thora. Someday you'll need this. And when that day comes, remember, you're not powerless. You never were." I closed the laptop. I wasn't ready to decide anything that night. But for the first time in 2 years, I was ready to stop pretending the decision didn't exist. My grandmother had handed me a key. The only question left was whether I'd finally use it. Friday morning, November 29th, I woke up with a plan forming. Not revenge, I'd never wanted that, and Grandma Eleanor wouldn't have wanted it for me either. Clarity, though. After years of taking whatever scraps my family offered, I needed to understand exactly what I was holding in my hands. I called Margaret Caldwell's office at 9. "Ms. Mitchell," she said, her voice carrying the measured calm of someone who'd guided 100 families through money and grief. "I was wondering when I'd hear from you. The fiscal deadline's Monday." "I know. I'd like to meet today, if that's possible." A short pause. "I can make that work." 2 o'clock? Her office sat in Back Bay, a converted brownstone with brass fittings and leather chairs. Margaret Caldwell was 58, silver-haired, with the sort of quiet authority that made you believe everything would be handled properly, even as your whole world tilted sideways. She'd been my grandmother's attorney for 20 years. She handed me a coffee and spread the trust documents across her desk. "Let's start with the basics," she said. "Your grandmother established the Eleanor Mitchell Irrevocable Trust in March 2022, roughly 8 months before she passed. It holds a mix of assets, stocks, bonds, a rental property in Cambridge, currently valued at just over $15 million. Vivian is the sole beneficiary." "Right. But you, as trustee, control every distribution." Margaret tapped section 4.2, highlighted in yellow. "This is broader authority than most trustees get. Eleanor was very deliberate. She wanted you to have complete discretion over timing, amounts, conditions, all of it. She told me she wanted Vivian to learn the value of things. Margaret nodded slowly. Your grandmother and I talked a great deal about her granddaughters. She loved Vivian, but she worried about her. She felt Vivian had been handed too much too easily, praised without effort, never pushed to build resilience or gratitude. She thought money could teach her that lesson, with you as the one doing the teaching. The money was just the mechanism. Margaret's eyes met mine. Eleanor told me, and I quote, "Thor is the only one in that family with the spine to say no, and the heart to say it kindly." Her exact words. I looked down at the 47 pages of legal text, and buried somewhere in them, my grandmother's faith in me. What are my options for this year's distribution? Several. Margaret pulled out a separate sheet. You can authorize a standard distribution. Vivian's currently eligible for up to $200,000 a year. You can defer it to the following year. You can attach conditions, educational requirements, a financial literacy course, proof of employment. Or you can restructure the schedule entirely. And if Vivian challenges any of it? She can petition the court, but Eleanor's language is airtight. Short of bad faith or a breach of fiduciary duty on your part, your discretion is essentially unchallengeable. Margaret leaned back. Your grandmother spent a good deal of money making sure of that. I thought about the Thanksgiving photo, the 4-place settings, the tea service that should have been mine. I'm not ready to decide today, I said, but I want to understand all my options before Monday. Of course. Margaret gathered the papers. One more thing. Your grandmother left you a separate personal bequest, outside the trust, $50,000, unrestricted. I understand you've been drawing on it for charitable giving. The Beacon Hill Winter Charity Gala, you've given the past 2 years. Yes. I noticed. You're listed as a founding donor. She handed me an envelope. This came in last week, your invitation for this year's event. I opened it. Heavy cardstock, embossed lettering, and inside, a badge with my name in gold, Thora Mitchell, founding donor. The gala was the very next night, Saturday, November 30th, the grand ballroom at the Harrington Plaza. Black tie, 500 guests drawn from Boston's finance and philanthropy circles, the same event where Vivian and Derek were planning to make their social debut as a couple. I hadn't clocked the timing, I said quietly. Margaret's expression stayed neutral, though something flickered behind her eyes. Life has a way of arranging its own opportunities, Ms. Mitchell. I looked down at the badge in my hand. For 2 years I'd slipped into this event quietly, dropped off my donation, avoided attention, left before anyone could ask questions. I hadn't wanted my family to know. I hadn't wanted this part of my life turned into ammunition. But they'd already decided I was an embarrassment, too working class for their Thanksgiving table, too far beneath Derek Hartwell to even be introduced. And tomorrow night, I'd be walking into the very same room they'd be in, wearing a credential they couldn't have bought their way into. Ms. Caldwell, I said, I'd like to book a follow-up for Monday morning, before the deadline. I think I'll have more clarity by then. She smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her all afternoon. I think you will too. I stepped out into the cold November air, the founding donor badge tucked safely in my purse. For the first time in 10 years, I felt like I had every right to walk into a room without asking anyone's permission first. Quick pause here. If you've ever been made to feel invisible by your own family, if you've ever had to choose between your self-respect and belonging, type enough in the comments. And if you want to know what happened at that gala, hit like and keep watching, because trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming. Now, back to the story. The doorbell rang at 4:23 p.m. on Friday, November 29th. I wasn't expecting company. Rachel was at her sister's for the weekend, and my social calendar wasn't exactly packed otherwise. I checked the peephole and felt my stomach drop. Patricia Mitchell stood in the hallway, flanked by Vivian and my father. My mother's expression carried that particular mix of urgency and entitlement I recognized from every demand she'd ever made of me. I opened the door. Thora. My mother swept past me without waiting to be asked in. We need to talk about grandmother's trust. The words landed like ice water. They knew. Somehow, they'd found out. How did you, Derek's financial advisor, Vivian cut in, trailing our mother inside. He ran a background check on the family, standard for someone at his level. She said it like that explained everything away, like combing through my private business was simply what wealthy people did. Imagine my surprise finding out there's a $15 million trust with my sister's name on it. A trust one never even knew existed. Harold came in last, shutting the door behind him. He looked uncomfortable, the way he always did whenever conflict brewed, but he stayed quiet. He always did. You're the trustee? Vivian's voice climbed. You. A teacher pulling in barely 50 grand a year. 58. Whatever. She laughed, that sharp, dismissive sound I remembered from childhood. This has to be some kind of mistake. Grandma wouldn't have put you in charge of anything that mattered. My mother lifted a hand, cutting Vivian off. Patricia Mitchell hadn't spent 30 years climbing the social ladder without learning exactly when to switch to diplomacy. Thora, sweetheart. Her tone softened, turned into the voice she used whenever she wanted money. I know this must be confusing. Estate matters get complicated, but we're family, and family should handle this together. You mean you should handle it? I mean we should make sure Grandma's wishes are honored properly. She pulled a folder from her bag. I've had our attorney draft the paperwork to transfer the trustee role to me. Honestly, it's the more sensible arrangement. No. The word landed flat and final. Patricia blinked. I'm sorry? No. I won't sign that. Thora, be reasonable. Grandma Eleanor chose me. I kept my voice level, drawing on 10 years of staying calm in front of difficult teenagers. She had lawyers, doctors who confirmed her mental competency, 2 witnesses. This trust is legally binding and properly executed. Vivian stepped closer, her face flushing. You don't know the first thing about money. You teach teenagers about Christopher Columbus. You take the bus to work. And you got your job in marketing because your boyfriend hired you as a favor. I watched her flinch. I know all about that interview, or the lack of one. How dare, enough. Patricia's diplomatic mask slipped. Thora, you're being selfish. This money is for Vivian's future, her wedding, her security. Are you really going to stand in the way of your sister's happiness? I'm not standing in anyone's way. I'm doing exactly what Grandma asked me to do. My mother's eyes narrowed. And what exactly is that? Making sure the money gets used responsibly. The walls in my building were thin, and Mrs. Patterson in 4B had almost certainly cracked her door open by now. I was probably more entertaining than her afternoon talk shows. Vivian must have felt the audience too, because her voice dropped to a hiss. You're embarrassing us. Again. It's what you do. You embarrassed us at my engagement party, showing up in that department store dress. You would have embarrassed us at Thanksgiving if we'd let you come. And now you're embarrassing us by pretending you're capable of handling anything more complex than a lesson plan. I thought about every comment like that I'd swallowed over the years, the dress, the dismissed career, the constant implication that my existence was an inconvenience they had to manage. I thought about my grandmother's hand on mine. You're not powerless. You never were. You need to leave, I said. Thora, my mother began. I'll be at the gala tomorrow night. I hadn't planned on saying it, but the words came out clean and certain. If you want to discuss the trust, we can do it there. Vivian laughed. You weren't invited to the gala. Actually, I was. I reached for my purse, still sitting on the entry table, and pulled out the badge, gold letters on cream cardstock. Founding donor. $50,000 given over 2 years. They send me a VIP invitation every November. For the first time in my life, I watched my mother's composure shatter completely. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. That's not possible. The organization keeps records. Feel free to check. Vivian snatched the badge from my hand, staring at it like it might catch fire. Where did you even get $50,000? Grandma Eleanor. She left me a personal bequest, outside the trust. I took the badge back and tucked it away. She believed in the causes they support. I've honored that. The silence that followed was enormous. I'd spent 32 years as the invisible daughter, the embarrassing career choice, the seat nobody bothered setting, and in 30 seconds, everything they thought they knew about me had come undone. Patricia recovered first, her voice tight but controlled. We'll discuss this tomorrow, then. At the gala. We will. She turned toward the door, then paused. Thora. Think very carefully about what you're doing. Family is everything. I know. That's exactly why I spent 10 years trying to be part of one. I held the door open for them. They filed out, Patricia first, Vivian shooting me a look of pure venom, and Harold trailing behind with something unreadable in his eyes. As my father passed, he hesitated. Thora, not now, Dad. He nodded once and followed the others out. I shut the door and listened to their footsteps fade down the hall. My hands were shaking, but not out of fear. Tomorrow night, I'd walk into that ballroom. I'd stand in the same room as my family, at an event they considered their territory. And for the first time, they'd have to see me for exactly who I was, not the disappointment they'd invented, but the woman my grandmother had believed in. The Beacon Hill Winter Charity Gala filled the grand ballroom of the Harrington Plaza, a space built to make ordinary people feel small and wealthy people feel important. Crystal chandeliers threw warm light across 500 guests in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. Tickets started at $2,000 a seat, and the room hummed with talk of portfolios, philanthropy, and property values. I arrived at 7:15 p.m. On Saturday, November 30th, in a simple black dress I'd picked up on clearance for $200, but the badge pinned to my chest, Thora Mitchell, founding donor, outshone every piece of jewelry in the building. The VIP entrance was separate from the main doors. A staff member checked my credentials, smiled warmly, and pointed me toward the reception area near the stage. Ms. Mitchell, thank you so much for your continued support. The board specifically wanted me to pass along their gratitude. It's my pleasure. My grandmother believed deeply in this mission. I took a glass of champagne and drifted through the crowd, trading small talk with foundation staff who recognized my name from donor reports. For 2 years, I'd come to these events quietly, arriving late, leaving early, avoiding attention. Tonight was different. Tonight, I was done hiding. I spotted them across the ballroom at 7:32 p.m. Patricia in emerald green, Harold looking stiff in a rented tuxedo but smiling anyway, and Vivian glowing in a silver gown that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Beside her stood Derek Hartwell, tall, dark-haired, carrying himself with the easy confidence of a man who'd never once worried about a bill. They hadn't spotted me yet, too busy working the room, Vivian's hand resting on Derek's arm, both of them running through the social choreography reserved for important people at important events. I stayed near the stage, chatting with a board member about education funding. It felt almost unreal, discussing grant proposals while my own family pretended I didn't exist, in a room where my name carried more weight than any of them realized. At 7:48, Derek noticed my badge. I watched it happen. He was scanning the crowd the way seasoned businesspeople do, cataloging major donors, when his eyes landed on the gold lettering across my chest. He said something to Vivian. She glanced over and went pale. But Derek was already walking toward me, tugging Vivian along by the hand. He'd clearly been trained to acknowledge big donors, standard networking, and whatever background check his team had run apparently hadn't turned up my charitable giving. Excuse me. He extended a hand as he reached me. Derek Hartwell. I don't believe we've met, but I wanted to personally thank you for your support of the foundation. Your contributions have been extraordinary. Up close, he was handsome in an unremarkable way, good bone structure, expensive grooming, the polished sheen of generational wealth. But his eyes were sharp, and his handshake was solid. Thank you. I'm Thora Mitchell. The name registered. I watched it land. The slight widening of his eyes, the quick glance toward Vivian, the recalculation happening behind them. Mitchell, he repeated slowly. As in Vivian's older sister? Yes. He turned to Vivian, whose face had gone from pale to ashen. You told me you didn't recognize the woman with the founding donor badge. I didn't. Vivian's voice caught. I didn't recognize her at first, the lighting. Derek's tone cooled several degrees. Your sister has given over $100,000 to a foundation I personally supported for years, and you didn't recognize her? Other guests were starting to notice. Our voices weren't loud, but the body language spoke plainly enough: tension, conflict, the kind of drama wealthy people can't resist watching. Patricia materialized at Vivian's elbow, her social radar clearly picking up on the crisis. Derek, darling, what a lovely event. Have you seen the silent auction items yet? Mrs. Mitchell. Derek's voice stayed pleasant, but something underneath had shifted. I was just thanking your daughter for her charitable giving. Apparently she's been a founding donor for 2 years. Patricia's smile froze in place. My daughter? Thora? He gestured toward me. She's apparently donated $50,000 a year, more than most of our VIP ticket holders combined. I had no idea. Patricia's composure cracked for the second time in 2 days. You didn't realize your own daughter was a major philanthropist? Interesting. He turned back to me. Ms. Mitchell, Thora, I apologize. I was told the Mitchell family would be attending tonight, but your name never came up. I'm not often mentioned. The words slipped out before I could soften them, but they were true, and I'd grown tired of softening the truth. Derek, Vivian's grip tightened on his arm. This is a family matter. It's complicated. What's complicated about it? His tone sharpened. Your sister is standing here with credentials that suggest she's taken this foundation seriously for years. 15 minutes ago, you told me you'd never met her. Derek, please. What else haven't you told me? A new voice cut in, calm, composed, perfectly timed. Thora, I didn't expect to run into you tonight. Margaret Caldwell approached in a navy gown, her silver hair swept into an elegant twist. She nodded to Derek with the easy familiarity of people who moved in overlapping professional circles. Mr. Hartwell. Always a pleasure. Then, to me, I hope we're still on for Monday morning, there's plenty to cover for the annual review. Derek's attention sharpened. Review? Margaret smiled blandly. Ms. Mitchell is one of my most valued clients. She manages a substantial trust with real diligence. She turned to Patricia. Your mother made an excellent choice, Mrs. Mitchell. The Eleanor Mitchell Trust is in very capable hands. The temperature around our little group dropped several more degrees. Thora manages the trust? Derek looked from me to Vivian. The trust you told me the estate was handling. Vivian's face had gone from ashen to nearly white. I thought. You thought what, exactly? I watched my sister search for words, for some explanation that wouldn't make her look like a liar or a fool. She found nothing. I think, I said quietly, the two of you have a lot to talk about. If you'll excuse me. I turned to leave, but Derek's voice stopped me. Ms. Mitchell, Thora. When I looked back, his expression had changed, the polished social mask had cracked, something rawer showing underneath. I'm sorry for whatever part one played in tonight's mess, and for whatever's been happening with your family. You didn't know? No. But I'm starting to. He glanced at Vivian with an expression I recognized instantly, the particular disappointment of realizing the person beside you isn't who you thought. I left them there, in front of 500 witnesses, and walked toward the bar. My hands were steady. My heart was calm. For the first time in my life, I'd stood in a room full of people my family admired, and they'd had no choice but to finally see me clearly. The tables hadn't just turned. They'd flipped over completely. Okay, I know what some of you are thinking right now. Thora, that was satisfying. Or maybe, Vivian had that coming. Drop a comment and tell me whose side you're on. And if you've ever had a moment like this, where the tables turned in your own life, I want to hear about it. Hit that like button if you felt even a fraction of the tension I felt in that ballroom, because the ending might surprise you. Now, back to the story. I found Margaret Caldwell near the silent auction tables, studying a watercolor of the Boston skyline with real interest. Well, she said without looking up, that was more dramatic than I expected. I didn't plan it. No, the best confrontations rarely are. She turned to face me. I have several distribution drafts ready in my office. After tonight, do you have a clearer sense of what you want to do? I thought about my grandmother's voice, the Thanksgiving photo with no chair saved for me, the look on Vivian's face when Derek realized she'd been lying to him. I want to defer the distribution for 12 months. Margaret nodded, unsurprised. On what basis? Beneficiary readiness. Section 4.2 lets me weigh financial maturity in deciding timing. I want to require Vivian to finish a certified personal finance course before any funds go out. That's within your authority. She pulled a small notepad from her clutch. Even at galas, Margaret came prepared. What else? I want to tell Derek Hartwell about the trust, its existence, its structure. Not to sabotage anything between them, but because he deserves full information before making a major life decision. Also reasonable. Honesty rarely hurts people who deserve to know it. And I'm not handing the trustee role to anyone. I'll keep doing exactly what my grandmother intended. Margaret jotted a few notes. I'll have the paperwork ready Monday morning. The deferral takes effect the moment it's filed. Thank you. She studied me for a long moment. Eleanor would be proud of you, not because you're punishing your sister. You're not. But because you're finally exercising the authority she gave you. That's exactly what she wanted. Before I could answer, I heard footsteps approaching. Vivian, alone now, her silver gown somehow diminished by the fury in her eyes. I hope you're happy. Her voice was quiet but venomous. Derek wants to reconsider everything, the engagement, the wedding, all of it. Because of you. No. I kept my tone even. Because of choices you made. Lies you told. I just happened to be standing in the room when the truth came out. You ruined my life. I corrected a misunderstanding. If your life was built on that misunderstanding, that's not on me. She struggled for words, her composure crumbling. You've always been jealous of me, always, because I'm successful and you're just a teacher. Vivian. I stepped closer, dropping my voice so only she could hear. I'm not doing this to hurt you. Grandma Eleanor loved you. She wanted you to have this money, but she also wanted you to become someone who'd earned it. I deserve it now. Then prove it. Take the course. Show you can handle the responsibility. In 12 months, we'll revisit the distribution. Her face twisted. You're setting conditions. Making me jump through hoops for my own inheritance. I'm doing what our grandmother asked of me. I held her gaze. You've never had to earn anything in your entire life, Vivian. Maybe it's time you learned how. I hate you. The words came out raw, almost childlike. I actually hate you. It should have hurt more than it did. But my job isn't to make you love me. It's to honor Grandma's wishes, and I'm going to do that whether you hate me for it or not. Vivian stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked away without another word. My mother found me next, right on schedule. Thora. Patricia's diplomatic mask was back on, though cracks showed at the edges. You've gone too far. Have I? I tilted my head. Humiliating your sister in public. Interfering with her relationship. That's not what family does. No? I said. What about calling to ban someone from Thanksgiving because their job might embarrass everyone? Is that what family does? That was different. How? For once, Patricia had no answer ready. Mom, I said, quieter now. I didn't come here tonight to start a fight. I came because I was invited, because I'd been donating to this foundation for years, honoring Grandma Eleanor's values while you dismissed me as an embarrassment. Everything that happened tonight happened because you and Vivian decided to hide the truth and tell lies instead. Thora, I'm going to keep serving as trustee. I'm going to require Vivian to meet certain conditions before she gets any money. And I'm done pretending it's fine to be treated like I don't exist. What do you want from us? The question caught me off guard, not because it was unexpected, but because for once it sounded genuine. Respect, I said. Not because of money or status. Because I'm your daughter. I've spent 32 years trying to earn a place at your table, and I'm done trying. Either I belong in this family as I am, or I don't belong at all. My father appeared at the edge of the conversation, hovering the way he always did. Harold, Patricia started, tell her she's right. Both of us turned to stare at him. She's right, he said again, his voice steadier than I'd heard it in years. We've treated Thora badly. Eleanor saw it. I saw it. And I never did a thing about it. He looked at me. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. I should have said that a long time ago. I couldn't trust my voice, so I just nodded. My mother looked between the two of us, recalculating, reassessing. I watched her realize the ground had shifted under her, that the family dynamics she'd controlled for decades were suddenly unsteady. We should go, she said finally, taking Harold's arm. This isn't the place. No, I agreed. It isn't. I left the gala at 10:47 p.m., stepping into the cold with my badge still pinned to my dress. The doorman flagged down a cab, calling me Ms. Mitchell with genuine warmth. I didn't feel victorious, and I didn't feel vindicated. I felt free. The fallout started within 48 hours. Derek told Vivian on Sunday morning that he needed space to think. By Monday afternoon, the engagement was on indefinite hold, not officially off, but suspended in a limbo that said plenty on its own. Word moved through their social circle with the speed gossip always travels among the wealthy. Hartwell Capital's golden couple had hit turbulence. Vivian's position at the company became untenable by Tuesday. She wasn't fired outright, Derek was too careful for that, but she was gently encouraged to explore opportunities better aligned with her long-term goals. Translation: her presence had become awkward, and everyone knew it. She cleared out her desk on December 3rd. My mother fielded phone calls from her social circle all week, the Hendersons, the Castellanos, the Morrison Whites from her charity board, everyone expressing concern, which was really just code for digging for details about the Thanksgiving scandal that had apparently become the talk of the winter gala. It's everywhere, Rachel told me over coffee on Wednesday. I heard 3 different versions of it at my dentist's office yesterday. Something about a sister getting banned from Thanksgiving and then turning up as a major donor. The details shift, but the punchline never does. What punchline? That the embarrassing daughter turned out to be way more impressive than anyone realized. Rachel grinned. People love an underdog story, Thora. Especially one with receipts. The official wrap-up happened Monday, December 2nd, in Margaret Caldwell's office. I signed the deferral paperwork at 9:15 a.m. The language was precise. Distributions from the Eleanor Mitchell Irrevocable Trust to beneficiary Vivian Mitchell would be suspended for 12 months, pending completion of a certified personal financial management program from an accredited institution. The requirement wasn't punitive, it was the exact kind of condition trustees routinely attach for young beneficiaries who hadn't yet shown financial readiness. For what it's worth, Margaret said as she notarized the final page, your grandmother would have handled this exactly the same way. She wasn't after punishment. She wanted growth. I hope Vivian eventually sees it that way. In time, she might. There's one more thing, Derek Hartwell's assistant reached out to my office yesterday. He'd like to meet with you privately. No pressure, no obligation, but he expressed real interest in understanding the family situation better. I thought it over. I'll consider it. My father's email arrived that afternoon, 3 pages, likely the longest thing Harold Mitchell had written to anyone in years. He apologized for 32 years of silence. He admitted my mother's treatment of me had been unfair, and that his failure to step in made him complicit. No excuses, no request for forgiveness, just a plain statement that he wanted to try harder, if I'd let him. I read it 3 times and saved it in a folder marked family. Vivian's response came by text on December 5th, fine, I'll take your stupid course. Don't expect a thank you. I replied, I don't need a thank you. I need results. Good luck with the program. She didn't respond, but Margaret confirmed her enrollment 2 days later, Introduction to Personal Financial Management, starting January 15th at a local community college, 12 weeks long. A first step toward proving she could handle the inheritance our grandmother had left for her. The Boston Society blog ran a piece on December 8th, unattributed but obviously sourced from gala attendees, titled something like The Thanksgiving Scandal That Rocked the Winter Gala. It told a mostly accurate version of events, painting my family in an unflattering light while casting me as a quiet philanthropist who'd stepped out of the shadows at exactly the right moment. I didn't love the exposure, but I couldn't pretend there wasn't satisfaction in seeing the truth written down in black and white. On December 10th, I got an email from the Foundation's board. Dear Ms. Mitchell, in recognition of your extraordinary commitment to our mission, we'd like to invite you to join our advisory council. Your perspective as an educator, along with your dedication to charitable giving, would be invaluable to our strategic planning. We hope you'll consider it. Warm regards, the Beacon Hill Foundation Board. I read it at my kitchen table, in the apartment my family had once found embarrassing, after a day spent teaching students about the progressive era and the long, slow arc of social change. Maybe, I thought, that arc was finally bending my way for once. December 21st, 4 days before Christmas, 3 weeks after the gala. My apartment smelled like rosemary chicken and roasted vegetables, with a pie cooling on the counter that Rachel had brought over, despite swearing up and down she didn't bake. We'd pushed my little table against the wall to fit 6 chairs. Rachel, 2 colleagues from school, Maria from Rachel's family, and my father. Just my father. Patricia had called twice asking to be included, and I'd turned her down both times. Not yet, Mom. I need more time. How much time? I'll let you know. She hadn't pushed back, which told me more than anything about how much the last 3 weeks had shifted things between us. Harold showed up at 5:30 with a bottle of wine and a nervous, hopeful look on his face. He'd never once visited my apartment before, 10 years, and no one in my family ever had. It's nice, he said, taking in the books and photos and small details that made the place mine. It's very you. Thanks, Dad. Dinner was imperfect and wonderful. Rachel told embarrassing stories from our first year teaching. Maria dominated a heated debate about pie crust technique. My colleagues griped about standardized testing. My father mostly listened, but when he spoke, his comments were thoughtful and kind. At one point he caught my eye across the table and mouthed, "Thank you." I nodded back. We were both figuring out what this could look like, a relationship built on honesty instead of avoidance. Vivian texted at 7:45. Merry Christmas, Thora. I'm trying. I showed my father the message. He read it twice and handed the phone back. She means it, he said. The course is harder than she expected, but she's doing the work. Good. She asked me if you'd ever forgive her. I sat with that for a moment. Forgiveness isn't really the issue. Trust is, and trust takes time. He nodded slowly. That's fair. I texted Vivian back, I see that. Merry Christmas. 3 words, not absolution, not warmth, but acknowledgement. A door left slightly open. After everyone left, Rachel lingering behind to help with dishes despite my protests, I sat alone in the quiet, looking at the string of Christmas lights across my window. The past month had taught me things I should have learned years ago, that boundaries aren't punishment, they're protection. That saying no to unfair treatment isn't selfish, it's necessary. That you can love people and still refuse to let them hurt you. My grandmother had understood all of this. She'd handed me the tools to protect myself, knowing it would take time before I found the courage to actually use them. You're not powerless, she'd told me. You never were. I hadn't believed her then. I believed her now. The Foundation's invitation still sat on my coffee table. I decided to accept. Not because I needed the status or the recognition, but because it felt right, a way to continue my grandmother's legacy of thoughtful giving, to be part of something bigger than my family's dysfunction. And I'd keep teaching, not because I couldn't do anything else, but because it mattered, because every time a student like Marcus Thompson wrote a sharp essay, or Jasmine Reyes asked a pointed question, I remembered exactly why I'd chosen this path in the first place. My working-class job had never been the problem. The problem was people who measured worth in dollars instead of impact. I picked up my phone and typed an email to Derek Hartwell's assistant. I'd be open to meeting for coffee somewhere neutral. Let me know what works. He deserved to understand exactly what he was considering marrying into, or walking away from. Whatever he decided, at least it would be built on the truth. The last thing I did that night was look again at the Thanksgiving photo Vivian had sent me, for smiling faces, no empty chair. I didn't delete it. I didn't need to. That photo wasn't my story anymore. It was proof of a version of my family that no longer existed, because I'd finally stopped pretending it was okay. If you asked whether I have any regrets, the answer's simple, none. I only wish I'd done it sooner. And that's my story. If you've ever had to draw a hard line with people you love, or if you're thinking about doing it now, know that you're not alone. Drop a comment and share your thoughts. If you want more stories like this one, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Check the description for more videos like this. Thanks for spending this time with me. Take care of yourself. You deserve it.